Scenes like this are rapidly disappearing. It was the annual rush on April 15th to get to an open post office where your tax return would be postmarked before the midnight deadline. Nowadays, significant numbers of us file electronically, so the number of post offices open until midnight has been significantly reduced. But the April 15th deadline is still with us. As of this morning, it is 3 weeks and 3 days away. The thing to be wary about this year is the number of scams based on misinformation about the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. So today on Midday Sunday, we'll have tips, techniques, and all the things to look out for to make paying your taxes as easy as possible. Good Sunday morning, everybody. We are delighted to welcome back Anabel Marquez from the Internal Revenue Service. It's been a couple of years since you were here last.
It's been 2 years.
2 years? And what sort of changes are in place now?
The major change is the Affordable Care Act. For the first time, taxpayers now have to indicate on their Form 1040 whether they had health insurance. Now, for the majority of the population, that just means simply checking off a box, line 61 of the Form 1040, and that's it. Especially for people that are e-filing, which, as you mentioned, is something that is pretty much the way to go these days as far as filing their taxes. It's really just a matter of indicating that you had health insurance and you're all done.
Do you have to prove? Is there some sort of a document that you have to attach or something, a name?
This year, all you have to do is check a box saying you had health insurance, if you did. Of course, you have to be honest on your tax forms, because that's when you sign that tax form, you're saying you're telling the government, you're telling the truth. Now, for those folks who didn't have health insurance, there are two things that can happen. Number one, they can file for an exemption. Or pay the individual shared responsibility payment, which is done through a separate form. But of course, again, e-filing helps take care of all of these requirements, and it fills out those forms if you need to file the 8965.
How does e-filing affect getting a return? How soon you get a return?
It's much faster. People who still opt for the traditional old school form of filing a paper return will find that it takes them anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks to receive that paper check in the mail. When you e-file and you opt for a direct deposit for the refund to go directly onto your bank account, we're talking less than 21 days. And in many cases, it's far less than 21 days. So it's definitely the faster, safest way to go.
Let's go back to Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. What sort of scams are going on out there?
The only one that we've really alerted taxpayers on is there are some tax preparers that are kind of making people believe that they have to pay the individual shared responsibility payment when in fact they don't have to. For example, if you are not a U.S. citizen, you don't have the responsibility of proving you have health coverage. So if somebody tries to lie to you or tries to tell you that you have to make that payment, then you have to be very wary about the tax preparer you're working with. You're paying to do your taxes. So that's about the only scam that we've detected so far. For the most part, we've had no glitches along the way as we've processed returns this tax season, but we do ask people to be very careful about that.
Where does the scam part come in? Are they collecting the money themselves or something like that?
Exactly. So tax preparers will tell a person who is unfamiliar with the tax laws, who doesn't really understand the Affordable Care Act and the way it works as far as your taxes, and will ask them to write a personal check or to give them a personal payment. And so that's how we've detected this, and we've taken reports about this happening. So again, any payments made on behalf of the Affordable Care Act on your taxes have to be made to the Department of Treasury, to the Internal Revenue Service, and not to an individual.
And if you suspect that you may have been scammed or in any way the victim of an unscrupulous tax preparer, what does one do?
You can file a complaint, and there's a form to do that on our IRS website, and we will look into it. Our Criminal Investigations Division is in charge of pursuing these complaints that we receive. However, one thing to keep in mind that's very important, at the end of the day, it's the taxpayer and not the tax preparer who is liable for the information on that tax form. That's why we ask people to be very careful, very cautious when selecting a tax preparer, because when the IRS wants to have some questions answered as far as what's on that tax form, the person they're going to be asking is the taxpayer.
But it seems to me on my return or in my agreement with my tax preparer, there's something that I check off that allows the IRS to confer with my tax preparer if there are any questions?
Absolutely, and many tax services and tax businesses offer that service, and some call it peace of mind. There's different terms that they call this service, but again, this service that you pay additionally for doesn't necessarily tell you that if the IRS has questions, that all of a sudden you're going to be relieved of having to pay any dues paid. I mean, the tax preparer may answer those questions to the best of their ability based on the facts and circumstances, but at the end of the day, it's the taxpayer who's responsible for any discrepancies.
Before I ask you about what one should look at or consider when thinking about a tax preparer, I think the question that comes before that is, do we do it at home with either our computer or simply by hand on our calculator, or do we go to a tax preparer?
It's just really a matter of how you feel. You know, many taxpayers can just simply go and purchase commercial software, install it in their computers, and just punch in the numbers, key in the numbers from their forms, and they'll find that it's a very easy process if they do it electronically, because it asks you to enter the amount that's found online, so and so, and you enter that amount. It walks you through the process. The software practically holds your hand and guides you through every step of the way. Now, when you have a situation where you probably have several schedules that you need to file, or you have a unique
Schedules being different forms
that you need to add if you are a business owner, or if you are self-employed, or if you own several properties and you just feel, you feel better, you feel more comfortable if you have a professional, helping you with this process, then that's entirely up to you. At the end of the day, it's just important that you file your taxes, and let's remember that the tax filing deadline is April 15th. Now, the method that you choose to do so is entirely up to the taxpayer. But if you choose to do it on your own, there is definitely a great opportunity to do so, and it's very safe, again, if you e-file. And if you choose to go to a tax preparer, that's an equally great option.
What are the things that one should look for? I would imagine that word of mouth would be one of the things when you're talking about a tax preparer.
Absolutely. Sometimes it just takes a quick Google search on that tax preparer or the tax office. But just for the most part, check to see, how are they charging you? Are they promising you a large refund without even taking a look at your forms yet? Are they asking to take a portion of your tax refund? That can be considered a red flag, because then the incentive may be to exaggerate or lie on your taxes to get a larger refund so that they can charge a larger fee. So for the most part, try to make sure that they have a set schedule of fees, and so that you know straight off the bat how much it is that you're going to pay for those services. That's one thing. But again, it's word of mouth. Will they be around after tax season? You want to know if that person is going to close up shop after April 15th, and then you'll never be able to locate them, because if that's the case, you may want to consider someone who's going to be available year-round in case something comes up.
You mentioned, and I don't want to go beyond without thinking about it, you also mentioned the Americans, citizens. You can have to pay taxes in this country and not be a citizen of the U.S.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's important because we live in such a cosmopolitan area here in Southern California.
Right, and the idea is that everybody who works and lives in this country and enjoys the benefits of living in this country, and those benefits include resources that are available for everyone, our highways, our hospitals, our law enforcement agencies, that we pay our fair share. So people who are not U.S. citizens, that do not have a Social Security number, can apply for an ITIN number. That's the individual tax identification number, and that's the number that they would use in filing their tax forms instead of the Social Security number, because obviously they can't get a Social Security number. So an ITIN number would be the way to file the tax form, and by doing so, they're paying their fair share. They're letting the government know that they're working here and that they are abiding by the tax law, and it's a great thing to know that people are truly doing what they need to do.
So in this case, you've been referring to resident aliens, I would imagine. Have you found instances where illegal immigrants pay taxes voluntarily?
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
have We have many people who are here in this country who are undocumented, who file their taxes, they keep records, and again, they do it with their ITIN. Now, several tax benefits are not available to people that have ITIN numbers, but they may even be due a refund depending on, of course, their set of facts and circumstances. So we spread the word and we let people know that the tax obligations really apply to all who work in this country. Of course, there are certain thresholds, so not everybody has to file a tax return, but if you earned above those filing thresholds, then it's an obligation, and we have millions of people who file taxes even without being citizens of this country.
What is the threshold for filing an income tax?
So for a person who is single, it's $10,150. If you made
Annual income.
Annual income. So if in 2014 you're a single individual and you made under $10,150, then the law says you don't necessarily have to pay taxes. I'm sorry, file a tax return. But it may be a convenient thing to do, because even if you didn't make the amount above the filing threshold set for the year, you may be eligible for credits. You may be eligible for a refund. There's something called the Earned Income Tax Credit. And
yes.
And you may be eligible to receive that credit if you file the taxes, and you won't know until you do.
And very quickly, Annabelle, for a couple?
For a married filing jointly is $32,500. I believe it's $32,500 for a couple married filing jointly. That's the threshold. If they didn't make above that amount, then they don't have to file taxes. But again, it may be to their benefit that they do.
We got more to talk about. We will do that when we come back. Stay with us.